Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, as well as revolution.radio. We are simulcasting live on my Facebook page also, I hope. Facebook redid that whole, I don't know, they had some issues. But anyway, yep, we are there live. So let me go ahead and turn the camera on for everybody and say hello real quick. Hello, everybody. I've just gotten back from my vacation. It was a great vacation. I was able to go home to Florida. As you all know, I'm from Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Anyway, I went over to Clearwater, which I had lived there for a few years back in the 90s, and reconnected with a whole bunch of old friends down there, as well as some of my South Florida friends that came up to visit me while I was there. Anyway, I'm having a hard time getting back in my groove, if you know what I mean. When you're on vacation, it's hard to get back into the swing of things. Anyway, so with that being said, what I did for today is I cobbled together kind of like a best of the Just Bernard Show, and I'm going to be sharing that with you in just a few minutes. Today we got a few talks, me talking about how to awaken your higher consciousness, some talks about your inner dialogue with Miriam Delicado, some talks on fifth dimensional reality with Inelia Benz, as well as quantum consciousness with Rupert Sheldrake. So I jam-packed a lot of my favorite speakers into this hour, so we're going to do that right now, as a matter of fact. I wanted to let you all know that it is October, so yes, of course, it is Samhain time, Halloween time, and over the next several weeks, I will be offering Wicca 101 live during the Just Bernard Show, so look forward to that. And let me go ahead and get you started with today's show, your higher consciousness. The awakening that is going on in the world. So many of us are experiencing the spontaneous awakening, the shift in consciousness. And for many, it is very profound. It's like kind of like those aha moments, epiphany, if you want to call it. And it's very, how shall I say, it's a very powerful moment or moments that happen throughout our days, our weeks, our months as we're going through this process. For many, it only happens one time. There's like one day where you get this big aha moment. All of a sudden, you get the quote unquote download into your consciousness, and you understand so much more about our planet. You understand so much more about humanity, and you know the veil of the illusion kind of gets lifted, even if it's momentarily. Or if it's, for the rest of your life, it's one of those big moments. Now, as we are progressing and living the awakening, many of us get lazy, and I was one of them. So I do have room to talk here. I was one of those people that got lazy and got so excited about the experience of awakening that I forgot it is a constant journey. It is not the end all. It is not the result. We don't know everything. That wonderful quote by Lao Tzu in the Tao, he who thinks he knows doesn't, and those who know they don't know do. And with that being said, because of the fact that we are having this awakening experience, or we have had the awakening experience, some of us tend to get a little bit lazy and think that no more work needs to be done. That is a very common way to look at it. It's like, okay, I felt it. That was great. Now I can just
go back to living because I know everything, but we don't. I believe that with any practice, whether it be spiritual practice, whether it be tennis, whether it be cooking, whatever it is, we have to practice in order to really continue evolving and moving forward. So there comes a point where we must take responsibility for our awakening. Facebook posts or YouTube videos or going to that seminar or going to this seminar or watching that documentary, it's not enough. Yes, it's a great resource. Yes, you have a new way of looking at the world and you want a better quality, quote unquote, entertainment. But media and such is not the answer. It is a guide, it is a part of the awakening, but it's not the awakening. The awakening is not happening on Facebook. The awakening is not happening on Revolution Radio. The awakening is not happening on YouTube. The awakening is happening in your day to day life. So as we are utilizing these tools, and don't get me wrong, it's wonderful that I have the show here on this wonderful radio network that offers these types of programming. These are the tools. They are tools. They are not the end all. Facebook could be a tool. You see a great article that gives you an aha moment. YouTube, you watch a video that gives you an aha moment. Revolution Radio, you hear a show that gives you an aha moment. But what I'm trying to stress here is that we have to bring it into our daily life. And we must take responsibility for our consciousness. Not Our consciousness is not just to look at a screen or to listen to music or whatnot. Our consciousness is with us 24/7. So taking responsibility for our consciousness can include many different things. And one of those things that I strive for and that I try to get across in my message to humanity is the practice, and it's a very common practice in many of the Eastern traditions, of mindfulness. And I know that's going to sound cliche, but as I continue this, you'll understand what I mean by that and why it is not cliche. Let me define what I feel is mindfulness. Mindfulness to me in my life means focusing on one thing at a time. I'm not being distracted by eight different things, not multitasking. Many people, we perpetuate this society that multitasking is a great thing and to be productive and whatnot. The reality of it is that when you're multitasking, you're doing eight things at once. There is no focus. I'm one of these people, and a lot of my friends don't like it because of that. If I'm doing something, I don't care if I'm washing a dish and the phone rings, I ignore it. I am washing a dish. If I am writing an email and the phone rings or someone's at the door, I'm sorry, I am writing an email. I will get to it when I'm done with this task. To me, mindfulness means being in the moment, being fully conscious of the task that is at hand, and doing that throughout your day, whether it be being fully conscious of the fact that you are getting out of bed and walking to your bathroom to brush your teeth, and then being fully conscious of the idea of brushing your teeth, being in the moment of, having that toothbrush in your mouth and cleaning your teeth, being in the moment of the steps that you take throughout the day. That to me is mindfulness. Not being an automatic pilot is another way of looking at it. One of the things that we do have as human beings, whether you are an awakened being or not, I go into automatic pilot mode on occasion myself when I'm not being fully aware of what I'm doing. I get distracted. I'm thinking about something else that's happening, but I'm folding the laundry, but I'm thinking about something else. We all do this. It's a very common thing within our human consciousness. And there isn't necessarily wrong with it, because there is nothing wrong with being human. And I want to make that very clear. We are here in a human body. You are human. You are allowed to experience life as a human. To me, what mindfulness, consciousness, the awakening, and everything that I'm talking about here is about evolving that human experience of expanding the ability, the possibility, the infiniteness of our humanity, of our humanness. So automatic pilot is not necessarily a bad thing, but the reality of it is that it is a distraction from the moment that you are in. How many of us drive to work and get to work, and the next thing you know, you're at work, and it feels like 5 seconds pass. Well, where have you been? You haven't been on the drive to work. You're worrying about grocery shopping tonight, or picking up the kids in the morning, or whatnot, thinking about what needs to be done, what needs to be done, and that's a very common trait, especially in Western culture. Of what's next? What's next? I have to do this. I have to do this, and not being within the moment. We see this very commonly. Very common example of this are uh, those friends of ours, and I have many of them myself, who are constantly looking at their phone, waiting for the next text, waiting for the next Facebook message, waiting for the next tweet, waiting. What's next? What's next? Show me something more. Show me something more. Again, it's a part of the human experience. Is it mindfulness? No. Is it going to help us expand our consciousness? No. Is it going to help us, move forward on this path of awakening? No. Is it bad? Is it good? Well, it depends. But I do believe that we are allowed to experience it. We are where we are because that is where we exist at that moment. And those friends of ours that have the phones and are distracted, that's where they are. It's not my place to say, and it's not my place to take the phone out of their hand. It's like an addict. It's not up to the addict. It's not up to you to take the drugs out of the addict's hand. Nothing will change until the addict decides to make the change. So, I'm not going to think negatively or judgmental of people that are on automatic pilot, whether it be with their iPhone or whatnot. But going back to mindfulness, it is a part of our goal as those of us on the awakening path to be mindful, to be in the moment. I am speaking into a microphone right now. I am sitting in a chair right now. I have the window cracked right now. I can feel the 20-degree breeze coming through underneath. I'm very aware of my surroundings at this moment. I'm not worried about missing a phone call. I'm not worried about what I'm going to do after this broadcast. I'm here with you right now, paying attention to what I am doing right now. That is, to me, is the definition of mindfulness. Now, how do we get to a place where we can live in mindfulness? How do we do that? Does it come naturally? Is it just something we switch on in our brain? No, it's like everything else. It comes with practice. But the only way that I have known and I have seen within my experience of trying many different methodologies, many different practices, the only way that I see that I have made my mindfulness work that much clearer is through the practice of meditation.
What I'm sensing and what I'm getting is that this is the next step. Now we've gotten to the place where we need to start taking responsibility for the way that we think. It's been a wonderful journey. It's been a wonderful path of, okay, taking responsibility for, let's say, as a consumer, what products are we buying? What corporations are we supporting? Okay, that was step one. Step two was our behavior, being kinder, being gentler. And now this next step is not only being kinder and gentler and being conscious of our interaction with society and, let's say, the consumer products that we use, but it's also the dialogue that we're using within ourselves. And are we being loving to ourselves? Are we using loving thoughts? Are we being grounded enough to really be able to listen to our intuition? And I feel that's one of the goals I have for today's show is hopefully to explain a little bit something that I call monkey mind. And I got the term from a book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. And it was a wonderful book, and he used the term monkey mind throughout the whole thing. And you can just imagine, you can visualize, a monkey jumping from branch to branch to branch to branch, And that is, how he visualized, your thoughts. You're constantly moving to the next branch, moving to the next branch. And who can deny not having monkey mind? We all basically get it. I don't, even those of us who are, considered spiritual, or I do meditation twice a day, but I'll tell you, when I'm out of meditation, I do have monkey mind. What's next? What's next? What's next?
Yeah, monkey mind is definitely present. It is most certainly present, and that's so well said. That's exactly what this transformation. I don't know how it's a little bit challenging to describe, but this internal dialogue that's been happening really it happens with all of us. We question ourselves. When I'm talking about an internal dialogue, what I'm talking about is that little part of the mind that questions itself all the time, that causes you to say, no, you're not right. No, you are not doing well. No, that's wrong. And whether it's a good aspect, saying, you know what, you need to slow down, you need to take a step back, you need to be more caring or loving or cautious or something like that. There's different parts of the internal dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at right now. What part of the internal dialogue am I hearing right now? It's not because that internal dialogue that sort of is a criticism to yourself can be good, or it can be bad.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the internal dialogue has shifted for me personally. Mm-hmm. And it's caused me to be so much calmer, recognizing those different parts of the internal dialogue that I have been having. And it's fascinating because it came to me from the external in almost like it was almost like a play being put in front of my eyes visually. And I looked at it, and then all of a sudden I went, wow. And it was like everything just went click, 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 click into place. And I truly understood what some of my challenges have been, and how to overcome them was really by understanding where that internal dialogue was coming from. Because the internal dialogue is, oh, you're perfect. Oh, you're perfect. You're the best. You're the smartest. And then another part of the internal dialogue is telling you you're garbage and that you're nothing and who do you think you are? So those two things, neither one of them is productive. Mm-hmm. So you have to find the internal dialogue that says, you have beautiful attributes, you are intelligent, you are loving, you are kind, the things that are good to yourself. Because people always say, well, you shouldn't be talking about yourself. Well, what should we be talking about? We should be gossip about other people?
Yeah, I know, right?
So we're talking about ourselves to show that we are in the same situation as everyone else out there. And the pathway to this internal dialogue is to determine what is the internal dialogue and where is it coming from. For example, I can externalize to someone and get really upset with them over something that I shouldn't be upset about, but actually where that's coming from is my own personal internal dialogue. And I recognize that now.
Right. And you know what? That is the goal of, I would hope would be the goal of every human being at this point. I can't help but want to paraphrase. I can't quote because I don't remember the quote, but I want to paraphrase Joseph Campbell, one of my favorite people. He's been long gone for years now, but I watched his lectures from Harvard for years. And one of the things that he kept speaking of as far as internal dialogue is concerned, he said it is our place not to be the subjective person in that conversation. When we're having inner dialogue, it's not to be subjective. The great place to be is to be the watcher and to be the one aware of the inner dialogue and to be objective. And again, I'm paraphrasing. So it's kind of like if we can remove ourselves from that inner dialogue and just watch it and say, oh, well, there's the negative ego talking to the positive ego, and they're bickering back and forth. You're pretty, you're ugly, you're great, you're horrible, you know. And just see, you know, this is just it's just the brain doing its thing. But again, you know, I'm hoping just that we can have, because we're having this conversation live, and also it will be on archive on YouTube, that more and more people will start being aware of this internal dialogue and how it really does manipulate us. It manipulates the way our habits are. It manipulates the way we dress. It manipulates the way we eat. I mean, how many times have I, you know, wanted to eat raw foods because I'm like, oh my goodness, everyone's doing raw foods. I need to do raw foods. You know, you're not spiritual enough if you're not eating raw food. You know, and it's like, wait a second, I need to listen to my gut, my intuition, and what is my spirit ready for? And it's kind of that, again, it's that moment of just stepping back and saying, okay, it's time to listen to my gut. Shut off the brain, shut off the ideas that I'm getting from the outside, and even shut off the ideas I'm getting from the inside, which might be repetitive behavior from something past. But to just be quiet and to listen to your gut. So, Miriam, what about this whole idea of being the watcher of the dialogue? Is there anything that you do yourself when you get that moment of aha, and it's like, this isn't my conversation, I'm just going to watch this? You know?
Well, what's really interesting about this for me is that I have been asking one very specific question for guidance on it for about 2 years now. And it's something that has been my absolute greatest challenge in the work that I'm doing. And I kept saying, I need someone, somewhere, somehow, something to help me with this. Because spiritually even, I couldn't move past it. And it was very specific. And and looking at it right now, let me back up for a second. I've got so many things going through my head. You said that being the watcher, you know, of this inner dialogue. And it's fascinating because just prior to that, I'd said that what happened for me was as if I was hearing the internal dialogue was presented to me externally and like a play. All these people around me were giving me something. And I went, it was all at the same time. And it was all surrounding this Sundance, in fact. And it was so powerful because I saw different aspects, in fact, of my internal dialogue. Mm-hmm. Each person to me was and I didn't realize that as I was experiencing it. It took me a couple of weeks after that, and I was like, I don't know, everything just came together in my mind in a moment, and I went, wow, that's what happened there. So I saw the play of the external dialogue, which was my internal issues. And then I listened and looked at my actions. I looked at my language. I looked at my wording. I looked at the way that I held my body and myself, the tone that I was using with each person. And I said, oh, what was my internal dialogue? Because whatever was coming out of me was in part of my internal dialogue. And then I said, wow, this is what I've been struggling with for 2 years. There were aspects of it. And I realized I had some very profound realizations. And they were really, when the realizations came, it was about accepting myself in my responsibility, in my actions, in my words, in my everything. Not to say that I'm perfect and I won't, get upset with someone again, or I won't get into an argument, or, I'm human and we all do those things. I'm sure that even the Dalai Lama has, upset people with his actions. I mean, no one is perfect. But definitely there's been a huge change with the inner dialogue, and how I got there was to just continue asking. And I think that that's one of the most important things that we have to do, is this manifesting that where everyone's talking about and that you brought up. It's like, how quickly are our thoughts manifesting? Well, I asked for guidance on one particular area that I was struggling with and dealing with very specific people for the last 2 years. And I just didn't know how to deal with them. And they're people that are very ego-filled. They're very power-mongering. They're very sometimes influential. They're often in high positions, or have positions of authority in some way, and they're just not nice people. And they attack me because, and sometimes, and often, I don't even know why. And I looked at that and I came to realize that no matter what they do, it is my internal dialogue that will say the outcome. And it actually doesn't have anything to do with the external conversations that we have. It actually doesn't. The internal dialogue that I have and what it is that I know or feel or sense inside of me is what gives the energy back out again. And that was something that I respect and accept in the manifesting stage of where we are right now. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Bernard?
it does. Absolutely, it does. And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com and revolution.radio. We are simulcasting live as well on my Facebook page. Hello, Facebook page people. I see you chatting down there. My apologies to my Revolution Radio audience. We had to redo the whole Skype thing, all these crazy updates. But we should be good to go now. And we saw in the first part, we were talking a little bit about activating your awakening as well as the inner dialogue with Miriam Delicado. Now I'm going to share with you discussions that I've had with Inelia Benz, who's a very favorite of mine, talking about fifth dimensional consciousness, and we're going to talk with Rupert Sheldrake about quantum consciousness. So that is what we'll be sharing during this second half of the show. Please remember that Revolution Radio is listener supported. Head on over to freedomslips.com and go ahead and make a donation and keep all these wonderful programs on the air. We have Studio A and Studio B streaming 7 days a week at freedomslips.com. Anyway, here is my talk with Inelia Benz about fifth dimensional consciousness.
Like I've mentioned several times now, the fifth dimension, the new paradigm, is not a location you get to. It's your creation. It's something you are creating, something we are all creating. So really think about it and think, well, what do I, or what am I really? Because it's now. It's not about what are we going to do in the future, right? It's now. What am I creating right now? So even now in this moment, you can scan your body, your energy field, scan your emotional body and see what is the biggest emotional or thought or something that's in there right now. Is it joy? Is it excitement? Is it love? Is it homecoming? Is it fear, right? Is it stress? Is it, I don't know what's going to happen? Because, wherever you go and wherever you tune your body to, That's what's going to be your experience. So it's really, really important that you really become conscious of this and work at creating that new paradigm to be something beautiful and supportive, you know. So that's a couple of the things, you know, that we're going through right now. And after that, we will continue, and people will continue, even if they made the choice unconsciously right now that they want an empowered reality. Sometimes coming out of the slumber takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. But as soon as that person, even if it's in a very unconscious level, decides to become part or create a paradigm of self-empowerment, even if at the moment all they do is watch TV and drink beer or alcohol or whatever it is, and eat pizzas and burgers, even if that's all they do right now. But if at their subconscious level they decided, I want an empowered reality for myself, that is all it takes. But that person is in such a level of slumber, sleepiness, right? Like a catatonic state, which is aided by all the toxins in his or her physical body and all the toxins that are coming out of those screens at a vibrational level, the fear and everything else. They're so stuck in that level that it might take years before they can actually come out of it. So yeah, we'll have to be patient. I'm booked until 2017, after which I'm going to retire and probably go somewhere, you know, and start doing what I love most, which is write fantasy and science fiction books, right? This is what I actually like to do. So I'll probably do that. And because why? Because in 2017 is when we reach critical mass. What does that mean? Is that as a species, globally, anybody, when they decide that I want an empowered reality, once that decision has been made, that's when it's going to be almost instant. A lot of the people here today in this party that we're having today at the GIC have already gone through this, right? I'd say the majority have already experienced that awakening and that sudden knowing. It's like the difference between thinking or believing something and really, really knowing something. You know, it's a big difference. And many people here that you're watching have already gone through that. But we want the rest of the world to go through that. We want people to realize all the numbing and misinformation, disinformation that is going out there, all the agreement, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is still an agreement of polluting the planet or the chemtrails or the wars, right? I mentioned earlier that our building block is light love, right? And that's true as a human being. Our physical manifestation, the physical reality of it, our elementals that we're living with is our physical bodies. They are made of light love. They're physical. They're the most basic building block of a physical reality is light love for a human being. And there's proof everywhere about this. That's the reason that, for example, we don't do well in a war situation or a very dark, abusive, violent situation as children or even as adults. The reason why a human will break, psychologically, physically break during a war or this type of abuse is because it's not a natural environment for them, right? It's not a natural environment for us to be at war. It's not a natural environment for us to be in fear. It's not a natural environment for us to be against other human beings. Why? Because we're not really separate from other human beings. We are the same being. As a human collective, we are the same being. And this division and separation is actually quite artificial too. We have the capacity, all of us have the capacity to communicate with each other telepathically. And I'm betting that everybody here has had a situation where you think of a person and your phone rings and it's that person, right? Or you think of a piece of music and you switch on the radio and it's playing. Or you think of somebody you haven't met for 20 years, you went to school with or something. Suddenly you're in a store and there they are, right? We've all had one of those experiences. And that's what it's about. That's how we communicate with each other. That proves that we're never alone. We're always with everybody that's here on the planet. Some of the exercises that I have on the website are, collective exercises and Gaia exercises, very much touch into that reconnection with other human beings, the illusion of separation, the illusion of being a singular identity, being shifting. It is quickly shifting, and the faster we can work at it to shift it ourselves, the faster we'll reach that critical mass where we will all be able to contact anybody on the planet at any time. And people think, well, what about privacy? What about my personal thoughts? What about if I don't want anybody, all of a sudden their voice in my head? What if I don't want somebody materializing in front of me through teleportation, which is another one of our innate abilities as a human species? It's all about agreement. And also, I can tell you this I know because this was my natural state when I was a child and still is. What about your secret thoughts and, everything that you don't want other people to find out? I can assure you that 99.99% of your secrets are everybody's secrets. They have exactly the same thoughts or the same nature of thoughts, right, as everybody else. And then you think, well, what about transgressions? What about the bad things I've done? Especially if somebody is doing something which is socially unacceptable. Well, once it's open, it can't hold that energy of secret, right? And I can also tell you that there's billions of people out there which are thinking exactly the same thing. And this is where we move into that state of awareness and growth. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, there has never been so many awakened, enlightened, caring, loving, building, co-creators, cleaning the planet, looking after each other, spontaneously organizing themselves in groups, geographical groups, anything that comes up, immediately people will organize around it to try and bring it back or create something positive out of it. On the planet, there's never been so many on the planet than there is today, right? Never. And you look around, you will see, you just have to do one search word, like share a car, share a garden, or something like clean your parks, or build a garden, city garden, or clean up the river, or anything like that. You're going to find a group that's doing it. You just join them, right? We're moving into that conscious community aspect. There's, psychiatrists and psychologists and whatnot have always talked about all sorts of things about, what people mostly think about. But the essence of our human nature, the only way we die and do not survive very well, is communication. Communication with each other. That's all we're doing all the time. We're communicating to ourselves and we're communicating to other human beings at all times. At all times. What clothes we wear, how we use our hair, the words we speak, everything that we do is a communication with other human beings because we want to merge. And how do we move into that natural communication? we expand ourselves to encompass the entire human race. And yeah, work on that for a bit because, you know, it really is. I mean, take it baby steps, but that would be really awesome if you could just do that.
The whole of quantum theory is based on quanta, and quanta are defined as quanta of action. And when he's talking about how they move from one place to another, he said they stop acting in one place and start acting in another, and they move between them. But from the point of view of the angel itself, when they're moving between one place and another, no time elapses, because an angel has no sense of time elapsing in its own being. But from the point of view of an external observer, time might elapse between it leaving one place and turning up in another. Now, that's exactly the discussion that Einstein had about the nature of light, the quanta of light. Einstein had a thought experiment where he imagined running along and sort of jumping onto a moving quantum of light. But from the point of view of the moving photon or quantum of light, no time elapses. It leaves the sun, and 8 minutes later, the quantum of light can act on something here on Earth. From the point of view of an external observer, it's taken 8 minutes to get from the sun to the Earth. But from the point of view of the quantum of light, it hasn't taken any time at all. Now, that is one of the most paradoxical features of quantum theory, and to find an exact parallel for that discussion in Aquinas was, for me, mind-blowing. It's what, in fact, caused us to entitle the book The Physics of Angels. Most of it isn't about what one could call physics, but that was a particularly striking instance.
And it's very interesting because I myself am a metaphysical student, for lack of a better term, or philosopher, and I can't help but feel that one of the greatest, how shall we say, I don't know if we want to use the word debate or divisive ideas, is the idea of bridging spirituality and or divinity with science. And I feel that now that we are discovering this realm of quantum physics, or the quantum realm as we're discussing, that perhaps there is a chance to kind of erase that line, or at least blur it a little. What are your thoughts, Rupert, on the idea of perhaps quantum science to explain? You know, we talk about the God particle quite a bit in science. What are your hopes, and what have you seen?
Well, I think the main importance of quantum theory is that it's made us realize that matter is not stuff, like little billiard balls enduring stuff, but matter is a process. And an electron, an atom, and so forth are processes. They take time. If an electron is a wave, which it is, then it takes time for a wave to wave. You can't have an electron at an instant, nor can you have it at a particular point. I mean, think of a wave on the ocean, because it's the easiest way of our seeing waves directly. If you slice it down and you just have a tiny fraction of time and space, and you get a tiny little bit of a wave in a particular place at a particular time, you have no way of knowing what its wavelength is or anything about the wave. You have to let time elapse to know that a wave is a wave. And this means that matter is a process. That means it has a future and a past pole. And what's interesting about that is that the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead in the 1920s was the first serious philosopher to grasp the importance of quantum theory. And he realized the fact that even an electron has a future and a past gives us a new way of thinking about the relationship of mind and body. The mind is essentially the future pole, and the body is the past pole. Mostly people think of the relation of mind and body in terms of space, the inner life, the outer world, and so forth. But Whitehead said the relationship is in time. Even an electron has a future pole which consists of possibilities. The Schrödinger wave equation in quantum theory tells you all the possible things the electron could do. But when it interacts with something, it does one of those possible things and not the others. And when it's done it, you can measure it. Now it's in the past, and you can find its physical being through this measurement. but now a whole realm of future possibility opens up. I think the reason this makes it easier to understand what the relationship of God to the universe might be is that God's mind, God's conscious mind, God is essentially to do with consciousness as well as activity and movement and change and purpose. This shows us a way in which a kind of mental aspect exists even in the level of the electron. It certainly exists in our own minds. I think there's a mental aspect to all self-organizing systems, and that mental pole is the one that most clearly relates to the divine being. The standard scientific view of materialist science treats the entire universe and all matter as totally unconscious. And then some liberal materialists say, okay, well, if you want to have a designing intelligence at the beginning, you could have a God who frames the laws of nature and fine-tunes the constants and then pushes the start button for the Big Bang and then sort of retires. But that takes consciousness totally out of the universe. It becomes a kind of optional extra. Whereas if there's a kind of mental pole in all things at all levels of the universe, as quantum theory implies, and as modern ideas about consciousness throughout nature also support, then we have an interface with the world of consciousness and indeed the different aspects of consciousness in the universe all through. And the point about angels is that they are conscious beings. We don't just have to think in terms of a universe with living matter and evolving an evolving universe that relates simply to the divine mind, but one which has every level of consciousness in between God and the lowliest aspects of nature. And in traditional cosmologies, the kind that Matthew Fox and I discuss in this book, The Physics of Angels, there's this kind of levels of consciousness governing the universe at all levels, and that's why it's so relevant and interesting, I think, in the modern world.
Very, very much so, and I have to ask you, and I know we're running out of time with you, Rupert. Perhaps you would share with us your idea of what angels are. And I'm glad you answered the fact that they have consciousness. That was going to be one of my questions. And of course, I'll follow up more with Matthew when you depart the show. But I'm very curious as a scientist how you conceptualize what an angel is compared to what the throughout history, we have been told what angels are, whether it be through the Judeo-Christian Bible or other types of mythology and the religious texts. Is it similar to what we have been shown through these books, or do you have a particular concept that you align with?
Well, there's 9 different levels of angels according to the traditional classifications, which we discuss in our book. And the top 3 levels I think of more like kind of cosmic archetypes: cherubim, seraphim, and thrones. The cherubim are the angels of divine knowledge, the seraphim the angels of divine love, and the thrones the angels of the divine presence. And these are consciousnesses of God's presence or God's love or God's knowledge, which are kind of archetypes that apply to the whole universe. And so I'd see these as kind of archetypal forms of consciousness which influence everything within the universe. Then there's a lower level of angels, and dominions, virtues, and powers, which are traditionally associated with the celestial realms, the heavens. Well, the heavens really are about the sky and the universe. And the easiest way to conceive of some of those kinds of intelligence is to think of the stars. I think that the stars, the sun and the other stars, are conscious beings. I think all self-organizing systems in the universe have a mental pole, as I was saying earlier. So the consciousness of the sun and the higher mind of the sun, that part of it which relates to the divine consciousness, the consciousness in the whole universe, one could think of as a kind of intelligence of the sun that's associated with the body of the sun. The sun is a celestial body. And so the guiding intelligence of the sun, you could think of as the angel of the sun, the angelic intelligence of the sun.
Mm.
So I think that the stars, when I look at the sky now, I see the stars as conscious beings, and each one subject to a kind of intelligent guidance, not just for the star itself, but for the solar system associated with it, because many of the stars have solar systems, not the same as ours, but their own kinds of solar system.
Yes.
And then the entire galaxy could well be conscious and have a guiding spirit or intelligence for the entire galaxy. So there could be, for each galaxy, a kind of galactic angel, which is another way of putting the idea of a guiding and creative intelligence working in and through that galaxy. Then when we come to the Earth, there are the different regions of Earth, different kinds of species and animals and plants, different terrestrial phenomena like the Earth's core, the Earth's magnetic field, the ionosphere. All of these, traditionally in science, in materialist science, are just seen as physical processes with no consciousness or intelligence. But if we see them as having a kind of mental aspect, then each of them could have a kind of guiding intelligence associated with it. And again, we'd have a whole realm of angelic intelligence at work in the Earth through the various phenomena of the Earth. And then, as Matthew was saying just now, the evolutionary biologist Alfred Russel Wallace, a contemporary of Darwin's, who, like Darwin, developed the theory of evolution by natural selection, thought that evolution was actually guided by innumerable angelic intelligences here on Earth. And that is a very remarkable view when you think about it. This man is right up there in the pantheon of science as one of the great innovators. And he had such a different view from Darwin about evolution, but it makes, I think, more sense than Darwin's view, because Darwin's view doesn't really explain the creativity of living organisms. His natural selection theory just explains how ones that don't work very well get weeded out, but it doesn't really explain how new kinds of organisms originate in the first place, or how the kind of intelligent adaptation that organisms show to their environment takes place, and how the creativity inherent in life takes place. So I think all of this leaves scope for intelligence, not necessarily intelligence in the sense of intelligent design, which I don't like that idea, because it implies a kind of engineering God or mind outside nature. These angels are operating within nature. They're within the natural world, within the universe.
And that was Rupert Sheldrake and I speaking, gosh, that was about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer, about his idea of, how should we say, cosmic conscious entities. That was when he released his book with Matthew Fox on the physics of angels. It was shortly after he had that TED Talk that was banned. I don't know if y'all remember that. But again, great group of people. We shared today Miriam Delicado, one of my dear friends, Inelia Benz, and Rupert Sheldrake. I hope you guys enjoyed this little compilation of talks on consciousness, covering everything from mindfulness to our inner dialogue, to fifth dimensional awareness, and of course, quantum awareness. I want to remind everybody that coming September, let me see if I can pull this up, September 15th through the 22nd of 2019, I will be a part of the Spirit Heart Cruise, and you can join me for this life-changing event featuring over 30 workshops, including Reiki 1, Angel Language, Past Life, Astrology, Mediumship, Crystal Certification, Life Improvement, and I'm going to be doing my talk. Actually, it'll be a new workshop that I've revised, my work with the Emissaries of Light, Returning to Source Wisdom, and I will be doing that workshop during that cruise as well. It's going to be a week-long cruise with over like 30 speakers. Miriam Delicado, who you just saw earlier, will be joining me, as well as, again, like 28 other speakers. It's going to be freaking awesome. And I believe if you book now, they will actually let you do like a monthly payment thing. I think it's about $1,000. It's like a 7-day cruise. We're going to be going to the Virgin Islands. We're going to go to it goes out of Port Canaveral, Orlando. We're going to go to Coco Cay, which is the Royal Caribbean's private island. We're going to go to St. Thomas, St. Martin. And again, it's a great ship. It's the Harmony of the Seas. I've never been on a cruise, so I'm pretty excited about this. I've seen like a tour of the ship and stuff, and it's pretty amazing. And what a great way to really connect. It's a vacation, but it's also a week of consciousness, of waking up your mind and your spirit. So you're getting out of your day-to-day consciousness and exploring and experiencing higher realms of consciousness. So I'm really looking forward to that. Again, that is going to be September 15th through the 22nd. You can go to spiritheartcruise.com to get more information. When you do book, of course, they're going to ask you, like, what speaker drew you there. So make sure you say Bernard Alvarez. And I am also going to be doing private sessions on the pool. I'm thinking poolside private sessions, mentoring, coaching, and whatnot, or even a tarot reading for some of the guests. So if you'd like me to do a reading for you or do personal coaching, poolside on the Harmony of the Seas next September, go ahead and join me on the Spirit Heart Cruise September 15th through the 22nd. And that should be great. SpiritHeartCruise.com. Next week, I will begin the Wicca 101. Of course, this is October. This is going to be the month of Samhain. And I will be doing, for the next several Tuesdays on the show, I will be doing Wicca 101, Paganism 101, whatever you'd like to call it. It's a tradition I've been doing for about 20 years now, on the air as well as on the ground, IRL. And I want to keep that up. So anyway, thank you all for watching today. I love you very, very much, and I will see you next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.